Namaste. Good evening. Welcome. And wonderful to be with you. Let us begin our study of Upanishad with a prayer. Om. 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 Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Bhararayanam Sutra Bhasha Kratau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Guru Atmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahana Vavadu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahaihi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace be, peace be, peace be. Hari Om. So, my deep wish is that we all step on the path of yoga. And yoga is nothing short of kaivalyam, which means freedom. And for us, there's freedom on all levels. That means that we have the freedom to define our script, to redefine ourselves, and also undefine, meaning that you have total mastery over your life script. That way you don't become an automaton, living like a robot, playing out a well-worn script, but rather that you can create yourself anew. You could feel that every day is a new life, really. Live in that light. So I say this because as we're looking into more upasana, we're going to come across an interesting yogic form of meditation where our identity gets much expanded into identifying with the space. So before we enter into that particular mantra this evening, let's first chant the Shanti Pata, the invocation prayer. So you can repeat after me. Om Shanno Mitra
Om Shanno Mitra
Shambarunaha
Shambarunaha
Shanno Bhavatvaryama
Shanno Bhavatvaryama
Bhavaryama
Shanna Indro
Shanna
Shanna
Indro
Indro
Brahaspatihi
Brihaspatihi
Brahaspatihi
Shanno Vishnurukramaha
Shanno
Shanno
Vishnurukramaha
Vishnurukramaha
Namo Brahmane
Namo
Namo
Brahmane
Brahmane
Namaste Vayo
Namaste
Namaste
Vayu
Tvameva Pratyaksham
Tvameva
Tvameva
Pratyaksham
Pratyaksham
Brahmasi
Brahmasi
Tvameva Pratyaksham
Tvameva
Pratyaksham
Pratyaksham
Brahma Varishyami
Brahma
Brahma
Varishyami
Varishyami
Ritam Varishyami
Ritam
Ritam
Varishyami
Varishyami
Satyam Varishyami
Satyam
Satyam
Varishyami
Tanmamavatu
Tanmamavatu.
Tadvaktaramavatu.
Tadvaktaramavatu.
Avatu mam.
Avatu mam.
Avatu vaktaram.
Avatu Bhaktaram.
And all together. Om Shanti.
Adi Shanti Shanti.
Wonderful. So we saw the closing statements here in this particular mantra asking for protection, protection over oneself and protection towards the teacher or the speaker. So mantra is said to protect you. There's another old Upanishad, Chandogya
Yeah.
Upanishad. That chandas means that there's a story about that where the gods, to save their identity or protect themselves, that seems that they covered themselves with mantra. That's the meaning of chandas there. They covered themselves with those meters. So that protected them. It's like a shield. You can think on that on several different layers. Naturally, may I have healthy, vital energy, that my body be well. But also psychologically too, may I protect myself from the mind's antarayas, meaning the mind's tendency to dissipate or fall out of balance, such as disease or doubt or that slipping back or not maintaining the state that I'm at. So mind can go through that. So protection towards myself. May I not injure myself. Thereafter, I can practice ahimsa outside. So protection, you can think about it on different levels. And this mantra helps awaken that force. Tanmam avatu tadvaktaram avatu. Avatu mam. Avatu vaktaram. Protect me and protect the speaker. Peace be, peace be, peace be. So last week we covered 4 different upasana. They are called Vyahriti Upasana. Vyahriti meant connections. So these upasana are unique that we find in the Upanishad, where it's not that the mind is focusing on one thing per se, but it's starting to see relationship among many things. Here we saw 4 upasana, and there was 4 connections in each one. So total of 16 factors. And the idea is Upanishad just gives you a certain model to help your mind grasp the infinite nature of creation, the different layers of creation. So what were those expansions? Expansions of the Brahman, the Saguna, the visible form of God. What were those expansions? We saw day was one, Loka. Then we also saw the night, Jaurisham. Then we saw culture, Veda. And lastly, we were told to meditate on the person. Bhuriti vai pranaha, bhuva ityapanaha, suva iti vyanaha, maha ityannam anena vava sarve e pranamahiyante. So we're told that reflect on the winds, the dynamic force of movement, those pranavayu throughout the body. And that they're all nourished by annam. Annam is a very deep word. And you're going to keep finding in this Upanishad itself that annam, its grossest form or definition is food. But we're going to find throughout the other 2 chapters of this book that annam keeps getting redefined. What is the real meaning of food? What is eaten and the eater, the relationship between those? So here we're talking about the food that you ingest and how that gets converted and then distributed through the physical body. So meditate on this force. One thing that will happen right away is you'll feel blessed. You'll feel that there's something more to life. You'll feel that there's connections among things. It can be a meditation in itself, just thinking about the food, the relationship of how the food came to your plate. the different steps in which it reached you, and then the steps by which that food now becomes you, becomes your flesh. So think about that krama, or that sequence, and it will be very expansive for the mind. So we saw that annam takes different forms. Its most unnecessary or outer forms become the feces. When it gets refined more, it becomes your flesh. And then the further refinement of the food that we eat becomes mind. So think about that process. And that's also called surrender, because you feel that there's a higher intelligence at work. When you see the effortless in that design, there's very little effort on our part. We just ingest the food, and then the rest is driven by that pranic force. So that makes us humble. So let's continue. What's said here is just a result of this particular upasana on day, night, culture, and the person. See if you can find in your book, it says ta va eta chatasrashtaturda. Hopefully you can all find that there. So I'll chant this first. Ta va eta chatasrashtaturdha chatasrashchatasro vyahritayah tayo veda saveda brahma sarve e asme deva balema vahanti. So you can repeat after me. Ta va
Tava
eta chatasrashtaturdha
Etaschataraschaturda.
Ura
chatasrashchatasro
Chatasrasro
vyahritayah
Ahritaya.
Vyahitaya
tayo veda
Tayo Vida
Ayurveda.
saveda brahma
Saveda
Saveda
Brahma
Brahma.
sarve e
Sarve
Sarve e
asme
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 deva
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 balema vahanti.
Valima
palima
Vahanti.
vahanti.
Talk about a tongue twister.
Yeah.
It's all those sandhis. I'll break the words apart for you. It's not that hard, but when you combine them, that sandhi we talked earlier means when you combine those padas together, a new kind of consonant forms to combine them. So it's ta, vai, etaha,
Eta.
chatasraha, chaturdha, chatasraha. So that chata, that means the fourth.
Yeah, Chaturda.
So chaturdha means there's these fourfold meditations we talked about that are four in number. So day, night, culture, and then the individual. Those who know them, Veda means knowledge, but here it means those who practice it, those who embody this, Veda. Such a person, Saha, they understand Brahma in this way. They understand God as these expansions. Not only that, but sarve asme devaha balima vahanti. The gods, or the devas, carry blessings to him. There's many ways you can interpret that. That's what the words say. The words say, it's useful to know what the words actually say so we don't torture the text. But what it really says is the gods, those luminous beings, devas, they carry those offerings, balima vahanti. They carry them to you. Now, how does this fellow Advait interpret that? From my experience, when I practice this, I feel blessed. And I feel that the way that I'm processing the world through my senses becomes enhanced or enriched, meaning that I bring that special awareness or attention to what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, what I'm touching, what I'm tasting, what I'm smelling. So sometimes the senses are called devas, because they bring light or luminosity to the different objects that we alight upon. So that's one way that I personally have interpreted that statement, the feeling of being blessed, and also bringing more awareness into daily life. So when I'm making a cup of tea, can I watch as the water strikes the leaves, and then the scent that emerges, and the whole process? You bring that awareness into every sensate experience. I think this is the real heart behind Tantra too. to not necessarily reject or renounce, but rather bring the light of awareness to every experience. And you'll find the beauty of that, or the science of that, is that if you can do it, that most of our indulgences simply go away on their own. So ta va echas tatashrashta durdha chatashrashta tasdro vyahritya. Those connection meditations. Ta yo veda saveda brahma. You know the Brahman in this way. Sarve asme deva balima vahanti. You're processing life in a more integrated way. So a yogi is a master integrator. A skill that the yogi will develop is called samyama, a weaving together of concentration, contemplation, and then the light of the soul, joy itself. And that ability is to unite things. We've talked about before yoga meaning a yuk or yuj, to join things. So yogi's mind has the ability to integrate things and see bigger pictures. So this is one way to do that. You have to reflect on it. Now, we're coming to a next section in the text. This is about reflecting on the light of the heart. And it's called Manomaya Purusha, the person behind the persona or the mask. And this is practical in the sense that it seems like a bit of a departure from where we're at, but this is another form of ancient yogic practice of discovering an indweller within this city of the body. That's why sometimes they call the human body Brahmapuri, the city of Brahman. So, and naturally we see that. Any animal that you've ever seen on the side of the road, you don't, the life is gone in them. You feel that before there was a beautiful deer, and the grace in their movement, the way they run, and their sensitivity to the smell around them, and the sound that they make, all of it evoke that wonder from a distance. And then in the tragic act of maybe a car accident where a car hit that deer, you find that the carcass and the skin is intact perfectly, but they're not there anymore. Who was that? So that who question comes, or what question? What was in there that suddenly left? I see the form just as it is. I see the whole shape. Sometimes, when there's not the mutilation, you see it just perfectly intact, that particular carcass, but the life went. So the feeling behind that is that the life is in you. It's indwelling in us. So can I get to know that now versus later? So let's explore this mantra with that inspiration in mind. This also touches on the idea behind ordinary samsaric birth, or a birth that's just born of our unfulfilled desires, versus a divine birth, a birth that's born out of our luminosity and love, our desire to create and share. So it's an interesting idea, and the yogis call this videha, the ability to identify as a body or a being of light. So first we'll chant the mantra. It's a bit long, so I ask for your patience. And then we'll take it step by step. And I'll be honest with you and explain where my experiences led me and where we may fall into imagination. And then I'll leave the rest to you. But let's see what the Upanishad rishis say about it. So first, I'll just chant it all just so you can kind of hear it and feel the mantra. Saya esho antahridaya akashaha tasmin nayam purusho manomayaha amrito hiranmayaha antarena taduke ya eshastana ivavalambate se endrayonihi yatra sauke shanto vivartate vyapohya shirshakapale bhudityagnav pratitishthate bhuva iti vayau suvarityaditye maha iti brahmani apnote swara ajim apnote manasaspate aim Vakpatis chakshushpatihi shrutrapatirvijnanapatihi etatato bhavati akasha shariram brahma satyatma pranaramam mana anandam shanti samradham amritam iti prachina yogyopa asva. Okay, let's chant it and we'll break it apart. Take it slow and connect with your breath. Take deep breaths in between. Draw that breath up from the base. Saya esho
Saya
Esho
antar hridaya
Antahridaya
akashaha
Akashaha
tasminnayam
Tasminnayam
purusho
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 manomayaha
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 amrito
Amrita
Amrito
haranmayaha
Hiranmaya
Hiranmayaha
antarena taluke
Antarena
Antarena Taluke
Taluke
ya eshastana
Ya
Ya
Eshastana
Eshasana
ivavalambate
Iva
Iva
Valambate
Valampate
se endrayonihi
Se
Se
Indrayonihi
Endrayonihi
yatrasau
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 keshanto
Keshan
Keshanto
vivartate
Vivardate
Vivartate
yapohya
Vyapohya
Vyapoya
shirshakapale.
Shusha Kapali
Shirshakapale.
Okay, we'll stop there and now just assess what we chanted. I'm going to draw your attention to a very key word, and it's on the first line, fourth word. Saya esho u antar hridaya. Hridaya. Do you see that word? Hridaya?
Hridaya, the heart.
Yes. Hridaya is what this begins with or focuses on. Hridaya is a Sanskrit word that means the heart, but it's not referring to the organ, the physical heart, though the physical heart is an expression or an extension of that. We're talking about the subtle anatomy. So the subtle aspect of your being, which manifests as the physical, needing a vehicle to express in physicality. So this particular part of your being is called the hridaya or the heart. The heart, according to yoga, I'm going to take inspiration from Yoga Sutra here in third chapter. There's a particular sutra that says hridaye chitta samvita, where potentially says that chittam or your mind is more than just the cognizing emotional memory tool, but there's a deeper dimension of that chittam that has the capacity to know things in a higher way. That's the heart. So I would call that an integrated mind or higher resolution mind. Think about music. When you use words to describe a song, it never conveys the overall feeling that the artist gave you by listening to the music. Do you know the difference? I could say, oh, this was rock and roll. There was a kick and snare on all fours, and then there was some guitar and a few bars between. But it never compares to the deep felt sense and full understanding that you embody by merging with the music, meaning the artist and the listener fuse in that experience. So words have a certain resolution, but music, I feel, has a higher resolution. It's a language, but it's much deeper. So that is called the hridaya, the heart. Saya esho antar hridaya akashaha. And the rishi here indicates us to access that space or make our attention towards the heart space. Akasha, you see that? Antar hridaya akasha. Antar means inner, hridaya means heart, and akasha means the space of that heart. So how to access that? That's a great question. You'll find there's a physical correlate, obviously, between the breast at the center of the chest, But even that, without using our sense of touch at the hands, even that is a little difficult to find when you just sit in the seat of meditation, closing your eyes and try to locate that space. At first, it's a bit difficult. So that's why it's easier to get a familiarity with your breath and felt sense in the forehead region, where it's much more sensitive to feel before making our way down to this heart. But the rishis say something really interesting, that the higher resolution understanding that exists in that heart is the space of the reflection of the soul or the Atman. The word for that is the Purusha. So the Purusha here is envisaged as an anu, as a light at the center of that space. And that space or that Purusha is all intelligence. That's what's meant by Manomayaha. And also Amritaha. There's no birth or death for that presence, Amritaha. And it's also Hiranmayaha. It's effulgent. So I really feel that this is what the Buddha meant by accessing the heart, the cave or the lotus of the heart. You hear that in the great Buddha's teachings. Go to the lotus of the heart. We're talking about that lotus now, which according to Veda and these yogis say is effulgent. Now, what we're to meditate on here is how the identity takes subtler dimensions at the time of death. You could really think of this as a fully living practice by the acceptance or the pathway of outside of the body or the death experience. So that that picture I painted for you was that the life force left that particular animal. We felt that something escaped. Similarly, our ancients saw that there was a pathway by which that reflection, merging with the prana or the upward wind, udana, moves outside of the body. So let me describe that for us, and then we can think about it a little bit more. So in that heart space resides this reflection of intelligence, that intelligent knowing power of the heart. Hridaye chitta samvita. Manomayaha. It's amrita, imperishable. It's also effulgent. Connected with that channel from that heart space is a center line. So from the heart comes all the way up through the soft palate to the center of the skull, all the way to the part of the skull at the top in the space above. This space above, about 12 fingers or so, you can consider your body's prakriti, your personal space, where you can gain awareness of. And whenever your body moves, your body's always located with a space. So this space is also part of you. So here it's said that there's a pathway from that heart that leads outside from the top of the head to the space above. That pathway or central channel is given a name here, which is an older, less popular name called Indra Yoni, the source or pathway of Indra. Now, yogis are calling this the Sushumna Nadi, that there's a central nadi or pathway by which that energy can flow up and out. So that's why you'll see in the text here, Sa Indra Yonihi, moving through the Indra Yoni. Yoni means a womb. So male and female both have womb. And this is the pathway of taking birth to a new space. Hiranmayaha. Now, some key indications are given the various junctions by which that force moves up and out. One is antarena taluke. Talu, we already saw, is a very important part of the yogic practice, is getting some familiarity with the soft palate region. That's also connected to the physical correlate of the center of the brain. Supposedly, that's the space where our memories are stored. So that's why in the practice of Ujjayi pranayama, when you touch that space with your breath, it's a way of purifying memory. So we have to practice that and just see it for ourselves. But the Rishi here gives an indication that taluke is that space that it moves up. Saya esha stana iva avalambate. He says it's something like this Indrayoni passes through something that's like hangs down like a nipple, stana. The meaning of that is that what do you call that? The somebody needs
Epiglottis.
Yes, epiglottis. Thank you. The word was escaping me. Exactly. So the epiglottis here is stana in Sanskrit. So that epiglottis is a good physical indicator of where we're moving. Stanas iva valambate, that hangs down. This is the birthplace of Indra, it seems. Sa Indrayonihi. Yatra asao keshantaha vivartate vyapohya shirsha kapale. Then it said that life force moves through the palate, up through the center of the skull, and out through the skull. So I believe it's an ancient practice too, where in some traditions, at the time of death, they will either place their hand there, or after they felt that the life force has left, they'll put something in that space, maybe some powder, or cover that space. So you have to first just recognize these parts. The heart center, that hridaya akashaha, moving up to the central channel, touching that space through the top of the skull and out to the space above. Okay, let's complete the.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just getting familiar with the space around you and the space within you. It seems a common mind would call this childish, but a yogic mind would have that curiosity to say, maybe I don't really know all about this inner and outer anatomy. Maybe there's something more to it. So the rishis are presenting that idea that there's some more to this that we don't fully understand, but we can experience. Vyapohya shirsha kapale. So that last word there, where we closed, said that you can escape from that. Vyapohya means that you can move out of that space. Vyapohya shirsha kapale. Now, what's to come? Let's chant this next set of mantra. What's to come is when you move out of that space, you're not dissolving. It's not the end. So in yoga idea is that death is not end. It's not one and done. It's a continuous cycle. And also too, that depending upon the qualities that we've developed in our mind and the state of awareness at that moment of death, that paves the way for getting a next body or a next instrument that is the appropriate instrument for the karma that we've engaged in. So this way it's really practical. You sow, you reap as you sow idea. My actions have, every action or karma has an effect. That effect in the outside world, we don't always know how it will manifest, but we always know how it will deposit in our mind when we're aware. In the sense that my actions are either good, bad, mixed. And for a yogi, none of those, because they're spontaneous from a place of joy. So those good, bad, mixed actions leave a certain impression in our memory, our mind. And that impression becomes the data or the ground for which we can be given a new body, when this body no longer can fulfill the manifestation of those actions. So that's the idea or spirit behind it. But what happens when that sense of self-presence leaves the skull? That's said here. Bhurit yagnau.
Runik yagnau.
Pratitishthati.
Pratishtati.
Bhuva iti vayau.
Bhuva iti vayau.
Subharityaditye.
Suvaritya.
Maha iti brahmani.
Maha iti brahmani.
Apnoti.
Apnoti.
Swara ajam.
Swara ajam.
Apnote
Apnoti
manasaspate aim
Manasaspatihi
vakpatis
Bhagavatis
chakshushpatihi
Chakshushpatihi
Shrotra
Shrotra
patir
Patir
vijnanapatihi
Vijnanapatihi
etatato
Etato
bhavati
Bhavati
akasha shariram brahma
Akashashriram Brahma
satyatma
Satyatma
pranaramam
Prananamam
mana anandam
Mana Anandam
shanti
Shanti
samriddham
Samridam
amritam
Amritam
iti
Iti
prachina
Prachina
yogyopaasva
Yogyopasva Iti
upasva. You should meditate.
Shwa.
Prachina yogya. For those who are fit. Prachina yogya means those who are fit for this ancient practice of yoga. So this is a yogic meditation. Why is it yogic? Yogic meaning that you are relating with the energy or you're working with the prana. So you're understanding, a yogi understands life not in an intellectual way. Yogi understands life as a energetic way. So there they identify with the prana. They become living prana, prani. So we saw earlier from the heart through that Indra Yoni or that central channel, the exit happens. So whether that's willful or whether it's by force at the time of death, what's to happen? Here, the yogi moves through what's called buhu. We saw the syllable earlier, buhu. Buhu here means the body, and more specifically, that the body is consigned to fire or agni. So you move into the space of agni. The meaning of that is that the physical goes. Your sense of physicality goes. It's like the touch is released from physical, and you enter to a sphere of light, agni. You can think of this in a very elementary way, meaning after the death, the heat leaves the body. And then also, Hindus ritualistically cremate the body. So that's one way of understanding. Have you thought about that process? Where will you be? That's good to think about because it's inevitable. So we want to bring all of life factors into decision making. So we should also factor in the impermanency of the body into how we live our life. Maybe you'll become more creative. Maybe you'll live with less fear. Maybe you'll finally say what it is that's on your heart. If you think on this. So Agni, Bhuhu, Bhurit Yagnao Pratitishhtati. It seems she or he stands in fire. Bhuhu. Bhuva iti vayao. From there, the identity doesn't moves beyond the sphere of light or Agni to Vayu, meaning that you connect with the samashti prana. So how do you understand this? Well, one, the breath leaves you. Breath leaves with the mind. That way you should always befriend your breath because mind and breath ride together. So what is that force that ejects the mind or that subtle intelligence from this body? They say it's the prana. So be friends with the breath. It teaches you things. So bhuva iti vayau. You come to identify with a larger sphere of the vayu prana, the samashti prana, meaning that you experience the field of pranic energy outside of your body. Particularly, we're talking about moving up and out. Then, suvaritya. Suvaha means the sun. You move to the sun. So this is the upward path, the path of light. Question, have you ever just closed your eyes and lifted your chin and just opened your face to the sky? Do you feel uplifted when you do that? You may not see anything, but you may feel that there's a presence or there's a light from above. And I find that in many religions, when they're worshiping, their chest expands, their hands raised to the sky. They call out to their God. So there's a reason for that. It's because there's a subtle sphere of light above the head that's nourishing the physical. And you can feel that when you connect your breath to this space. So there may be particular practices to do that, but just think on it. Suvaritya. That's the sphere of mind. Mind. You also experience that light when you're practicing japa mentally. You've withdrawn the japa into a mental space and you just experience the light of the mind. Suvaritya. Then it says, Maha iti Brahmani. That you reach Brahman, it seems. Here, this Brahman, what does it mean by Brahman? Here it means that, so Buhu was the first. You occupy the field of Agni or fire. Then it says Bhuvaha is the prana, the life force. You identify with that. Suvaha is the sun, meaning the subtle nature of mind. Lastly, it says that the yogi then identifies what's called Mahaha, and the word for they give that is Brahman. But what it means is Mahaha means that you identify with space. Your body seems to be identified with space. Akasha. Does it make any sense? Imagine it. You know what is also really interesting is when it comes to developing power and yoga practice, or really any accomplishment, I find that the greatest hangup is our doubt, our own limiting thoughts that I can't do it, or this is just all made up. It's just a thought. So you have to will it alive. You have to exercise that imaginative ability instead of for our destructive purposes or for mind's downward tendencies. Exercise that ability to imagine for creative power. So here you have to work on that. But sense of self, that Purusha existing in the heart, identifies with the larger space sphere. Now, what's a result of this? That's what's said here. What's happening to the yogi as a result of identifying as Akasha? Apnoti swara ajim. The first thing that's said is that he obtains or she obtains swarajam. Swarajam means self-effulgence or also self-mastery. Apnoti manasaspatiim. And then also that yogi becomes the master of mind, manasaha. Vakpatihi becomes the master or the lord of speech. Chakshushpatihi, the lord of eyes, chakshuh. Shrotrapatihi, the lord of the ears. Vijnanapatihi, the lord of knowledge, intelligence. Etat tataha bhavati. Now, Akasha Shariram Brahma, whose sense of self exists as space itself. Akasha Shariram, their body is now a body of space. Akasha Shariram Brahma, Satyatma Pranaramam. And their nature is truth. And they sport the prana, it seems. They flow with the prana. Rama means to revel in. Mm-hmm. Their body becomes a body of space, and they revel in the prana that moves through the space. Pranaramam. Mana anandam. And they enjoy a great bliss from that. Their mind is in a state of bliss. Mana anandam. They're also full of peace. Shanti samritam. Amritam,
Amritam immortality.
mortality. Iti prachina yogya. You who are fit for this ancient form of yoga practice. Upasva, meditate. Wow. So that may seem really far out. That's okay. So don't believe it, but maybe it inspires you. And also, it is really important that we reflect on the impermanence of the body and start asking ourselves, what is that deeper intelligence within me? And then, better yet, who am I? So, those questions we have to spend some time on. That's why Swamiji will have a gathering at least once a year for such questions to be asked, such dialogue, that we may get lost in our busy workabout day and life, family, children, all that, which is amazing. That's an expression of Brahman, but we don't see it that way. So we have to periodically take retreat. It's really important to take retreat and find a time, quiet time to ask ourselves the deeper questions. Now, just some personal experience to share with you that may be inspiring or maybe help us understand this better. The first and most important thing is to have a relationship with space. And the step to that is first practicing pranayama. When your breath becomes released from the physical, because you're no longer just exhaling and inhaling, but when you stay with feeling the soft touch of the breath and its relationship with the space outside of you, mind will undergo a transformation. Mind will become much more light. Then what you'll experientially sense when you exhale and inhale and let the body become very porous like, or breath is really soft, you'll feel that the division between your physical body and the space outside of your body seems to be dissolving or seems to be very light. So that this is totally me and this isn't me. That huge gap at present diminishes. You start to feel that where I begin and where I end loosens. The way I can, a picturesque way to describe this is if you've ever seen a child at play or a newborn baby watching how their skin is very supple and porous. Each breath is very deep, and the skin is got a suppleness to it that's so soft and sweet. And as they're breathing, it's like their whole body is breathing. Or if you've ever seen a young child, maybe on a holiday, given a favorite gift, or on a vacation, when you see that they're lost in their play, if you ever look at them during such a state, you'll find that their whole psychoanatomy is completely open. Their whole body is in an open shape, porous, and even if you look at their eyes, my God, those eyes, you could just get lost in the child's eyes like that because they're so glassy. The whole world is pouring through them. I encourage you to spend time with children, your grandchildren or your friends' children. Just periodically see them and invoke that openness. It's the eyes that get me. This is almost too much to think about. I could cry. So we have to remember that and have that openness. So
But
that's the kind of openness that I feel when you practice this pranayama. Yes, Sat.
is this similar like what you call flow when you're in the flow? Like if you do something like play a game or a physical thing, and
Yeah.
you don't know if the memory you're not sure if you were there or if you're not there when it's all finished.
Yeah.
You get lost
Yes.
in the actual act.
Yeah, that's so this is more specific, but that's exactly what happens when we get into those flow states. You're right. When we're in the flow states, then we're not even concerned about our physical body.
There's no barrier. There's like you're lost.
Yeah, what we're doing becomes so engaging that there seems to be a merging there. We just
Mhm.
become the play.
Yep.
So the musician becomes the guitar and the music,
Yep.
or the dealer becomes the cards, or the parent becomes fused with the child. You know, you can think of any example of any sport or activity that you play. You feel that you just become one with that. That's a samadhi. And in such state, you existing as a separate individual seems to cease. So you're right. I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here it's a more specific in that we're talking about occupying higher regions above and outside of the body, but the experience is there that me as a physical, limited, circumscribed entity is going. So what I was saying is that one straightforward way of coming into such a state is by practicing pranayama. Just refine your breath, that exhale and inhalation, till it becomes long, smooth, unbroken, and that you really highlight the feeling of touch registered at the nostrils and at the edge of the skin. That's one way to do that. Another contemplative tool that has worked for me is after, it can be done anytime really, but start to very deeply attend to the edge of your skin and stay with it. And attend to the fact that the body is always in relationship to the space. And there's space in all parts of the body, outside of the body, and there's space everywhere inside of the body. So meditate on space. Akasha Shariram Brahma. And your mind will undergo what's called a samapati. That transformation where your object of meditation and you, they merge. So yeah, reflect on the relationship of space and your sense of identity. That can bring wondrous experience. You feel that you're floating through the space.
I'm gonna put this on blur. I wasn't on blur.
Akasha Shariram Brahma Satyatma Pranaramam. That you're reveling or just floating or flying through the space. Maybe you've had that dream before. Maybe you've dreamt that you're flying or moving through space. That's another entryway or path that you could pursue to reflect on that. It's very uplifting for the mind. I have a great teacher who sometimes these things just have to be conveyed energetically. So I have a great teacher who described for me her experience of not feeling the physical and the division between the physical and the outside space and feeling that there's no real separation there. There was something that happened to my mind when I listened to her words, where I embodied that experience immediately just by listening. That possibility is there. So that's why in Yoga Sutra it says Vita Raga Vishayam Va Chittam. When you're in the company of people who have dedicated their life to this and spent some time with it, sometimes when they communicate what their experience is, their experience gets transferred to you and you feel that. So I don't have an exact way to tell you how to practice meditating on the relationship between your body and space. Somebody told me that, who I deeply love and admire. And suddenly I felt, where am I? And so that left a deep impression in my mind where I can go back and access that felt sense, but it's very hard for me to put into words. But just keep your mind open to that possibility. Akasha Shariram Brahma Satyatma Pranaramam Mana Anandam. So this is a state of deep peace. Shanti Samradam Amradam Iti Prachina Yogyopa Asva. One more thing I'll add. I take inspiration in helping us connect from the yogic path in Yoga Sutra. There's another sutra after Patanjali describes accessing this heart space. He says, Pratibhadva Sarvam. He says that in a flash of brilliance, sometime everything is understood. He also says too that from that pratibha or that intuitive flash, he says can come higher hearing, higher touch, higher sight, higher smell, higher taste. Jayante are born these higher faculties. So yeah, that can happen. You'll suddenly feel that what you're perceiving is all luminous. The just a single green leaf can bring you into ecstasy. That color becomes so vibrant that it's just, you become speechless. So the most mundane things suddenly become sacred. The world seems like it's heaven. So that, I say that because here the Rishi is indicating that what's the result of practicing occupying a different identity or a larger identity? You become master over yourself. Apnoti swarajam, apnoti manasaspatiim. The mind is available for you. Then also vak chakshushpatihi, speech, your eyes, your ears, your knowledge. They say all this gets enlivened. Here it's said that you get lordship over it, but that means that everything is in a heightened, alive state. You become alive to what is. So may that inspire you. Practice yoga, practice pranayama. And if you have any more questions, we can discuss one-to-one. I would love to talk more and maybe give some more technical pointers that have helped me. But as I was saying, sometimes these things are just transmitted, and that hritaya, that heart space knows it. It's like we know it deep inside that this is possible, but it's our just limiting thoughts or beliefs that keep us from experiencing it. So, okay, it looks like that's time. Uh, so I think this is a good place to close because it's really a complete practice in itself. There will be one more upasana that we see in the next class next week, where again the Rishi tries to wrangle the phenomenal universe into structures. This time it's 30 factors. Pankta Swarupena. The universe is seen in fives. So there's six different factors in fives, making up 30. But what makes this slightly different is here in what we'll see next week is here the Rishi shows us how the inner and outer life nourish each other. So you'll find that kind of interdependence experience where you feel the inner and outside are so intermingled, it's hard to differentiate between them. So when the Rishi talks about this next upasana, they talk about different specific factors that make up our inner life and our outer life, but how both the outer life and the inner life nourish one another. They're mutually supportive. That's what's said in the next mantra, which we'll see next week. So a lot of great teachings to come. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to share it. It's just really fun. And so practically, how do we go forward from this evening on? Right now, all of us can always be aware of our breath throughout the whole day. That in itself brings a lot of peace and is incredibly nourishing to the nervous system. Second, too, just reflect upon your body in space. Start thinking about how space is involved in every movement. It could be the space between your breath. It could be the space between your body. It could be the space of every thought. So think on space. Let your mind get that samapati here, that transformation into spaciousness. And a lot of insight will emerge from that. We can all do that right now. So let's close with a prayer. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Hari Om.